Hello and welcome to Drunk on Tea. Today I'm going to show you how I paint this Moria Goblin. So first of all I've primed him with black and I'm going to come in with some lead belcher and paint all of the armour that's on the model. So there's quite a lot of armour on this, so make sure you take your time and pick out everything that we want to be silver. It's got these bits across his body, some bits here on the tips of his bow, as well as sort of boot guards. There is a lot of metal on this model, so just take your time and pick it all out with a couple of thin coats of lead belcher. All of the metal now base coated with lead belcher. The next step that we're going to do is shade it all. So I'm coming in with some Nuln oil. I'm giving this an all over wash over everything we just painted with lead belcher. The shade has dried, you can see it's brought out a bit of definition to that armour. So now I'm going to come in with a bit of Necron compound and give a dry brush to highlight all of that metal. Don't worry about getting this over any other stuff, we'll be painting that again in a minute. Just make sure you give a quick dry brush of Necron compound to all of that armour. The armour highlighted, that stage is now complete. As you can see, I have got some of the dry brush over areas that I don't want to be silver, so I'm coming in with some Abaddon black. I'm going to paint everything that I don't want to be silver back to a solid base coat of black. So just take your time with this and paint back over everything you didn't want to be silver with a coat of black paint. That's everything painted back with black now, so we won't have any silver showing through where we don't want it. Now I'm going to paint the cloth, so I'm coming in with some corn red and putting a couple of thin coats of corn red over everything that is fabric. So he's got this sort of skirt down here, as well as somewhere around his arms and other places. Just work your way around slowly, picking out everything that we want to be cloth on the model. Couple of coats of corn red, that's all of the fabric base coated on him. So next I'm going to paint his bow. I'm just coming in with a layer of dryad bark, just putting this on the wooden parts of his bow. Also catching the arrows that are sticking out the top of his quiver as well. the wood painted. It's starting to come together. So next I'm going to paint his quiver and strap. So for this I'm base coating with Rhinox hide. So it's the quiver here on his back, and he's got a strap going across his chest holding the quiver in place. So catch both of those with a couple of layers of Rhinox hide. That's now base coated. So the next step is I'm going to paint the arrow feathers and his boots. So for this I'm using Corvus Black. Just putting this over the feathers at the tops of his arrows and the boots on his feet as well. So just give these a quick coat of Corvus Black. There are also a couple of straps on his arms. Catch these with Corvus Black as well. That's how the black is applied. So the next thing I'm going to paint is the bit of hair that he has. So for this I'm coming in with Mechanica Standard Grey and just applying this to the hair that's sticking off the top of his head. To be nice and careful with this, you don't want to get this over any of the things we've painted so far. So just take your time and catch all the hair on his head. That one painted. That's the next step of base coat applied. So now we're going to come in with Nuln Oil and shade everything we've just painted. So that's the Corn Red, Corvus Black, Mechanica Standard Grey, Rhinox Hide and Baneblade Brown. So everything we just put down those last few steps, give it a shade of Nuln Oil. But try not to get this on any of the metal that we've done and highlighted. Just take your time. Just give everything a coat of Nuln Oil. Once the shade has dried, you can see that the goblin's starting to come together with some nice definition from the shade paint. Now I'm coming in with Corn Red. For this I'm going to paint this onto the fabric. That's where the Nuln Oil has settled in the recesses. I'm putting a thin layer of Corn Red on either side of anything that's settled, bringing everything back up but leaving that Nuln Oil showing in the recesses. So just work your way around, placing this on all of the more raised areas of all the fabric. That Corn Red applied, you can see it's added some definition back to the fabric. So next I'm coming in with Mephiston Red. I'm going to thin this down quite a bit, and I'm putting this in the middle of everywhere where I just painted that Corn Red. Grabbing this nice and thin to help build up a good transition without looking too stark as we highlight all of this fabric. Mephiston Red applied, it's now time to just do one final edge highlight on all of the cloth. I'm coming in with Evil Sun's Scarlet, placing this on all the edges as well as the most raised folds as well. So just a nice thin line of Evil Sun's Scarlet as an edge highlight on all of the red. And that's the fabric now highlighted. So it's starting to look really good. You can see it's got some nice definition and transition on there. So now we're going to highlight the wood. So I'm coming with some Baneblade Brown. This is just a dry brush, quickly catching the bow and the arrows in his quiver. Be nice and neat, don't catch this on anything you don't want. Just a quick dry brush of Baneblade Brown. The wood's now nicely highlighted. So now I'm going to highlight the leather. So for this I'm going back with Rhinox Hide, nice and thin, and playing this on the raised areas of the quiver. So you can see where the shade hasn't settled, but a bit of Rhinox Hide to bring that back up to colour. With that first highlight applied, next step is to come in with a 50-50 mix of Rhinox Hide and Gawthor Brown, and for this I'm placing it in the middle of where I placed those previous highlights. Now it's just an edge highlight of Gawthor Brown, working way around all the most prominent areas of the quiver, and just putting a thin layer of Gawthor Brown. Also do this on the strap as well, an edge highlight of Gawthor Brown. The leather now highlighted. So the next step is we're going to highlight the straps in his boots. So for this I'm coming with Mechanica Standard Grey, just putting a thin line in the middle of all of these straps that are on his arms. Just put a thin line of Mechanica Standard Grey in the middle of each of those straps. And at the top of his boots and any raised points, also put thin line of Mechanica Standard Grey. This will be the tips of his boots as well, and the arrows in his quiver as well. Just try and catch some of the raised details on those with some Mechanica Standard Grey. That's all of the black highlighted. So now all that's left to do for this stage is to highlight his hair. So for this I'm using Dawnstone. I'm just going to catch as many strands as possible on the hair that's on his head. So be nice and careful. For all of the sculpted in strands, if you can, highlight each one with a little line of Dawnstone. So that's all of those steps highlighted. So now we've really just got to paint in his skin. So to do this, I'm coming in with some Death Guard Green and painting all of the skin that's on the model. Now this is quite a thin paint, so it is going to take 2 or 3 coats. But take your time, be nice and neat and work your way around the model, picking out all of his exposed skin with a couple of layers of Death Guard green. Try to make sure you don't catch anything we've painted and highlighted so far. Just take your time, work your way around, pick out all of his skin with a couple of coats of Death Guard green. For a couple of coats, but a nice solid base cover on all of his skin. Next, I'm going to shade all of his flesh. I'm doing that with some Athonian camo shade. So just place this all over the skin, give it a nice wash with Athonian camo shade. Once that's dried, you can see it's really added some depth and definition to his skin. So now I'm going to highlight that up with some Nurgling green. Have this nice and thin. Work your way around the model, placing this where the shade hasn't settled. So in the deepest recesses, leave the Death Guard green and camo shade, and place some Nurgling green on all of the more raised areas where that shade hasn't settled. Having it nice and thin will help build up a good transition without it looking too stark. So just work your way around, picking out all these raised details here, like his eyebrows and his nose and his lips and his ears, as well as on the arms, picking out all of the muscles that the shade hasn't settled on. Because this will be a focal point of the model, it is worth taking the time to make sure you pick out all of those details. There, with that highlight complete, skin's starting to look really nice. So now I'm just coming in with some Ogryn camo. For this I'm going to do edge highlight on all the most pronounced and raised areas. So it's here, like the tips of his ears, and on his face I'm going to do things like his eyebrows, his cheek, all of the most dark details. Come in, put a thin edge highlight of Ogryn camo on all of them. So take your time, work your way around, pick out all those sharp details, give them an edge highlight of Ogryn camo. So now that's the skin highlighted. All that's left for us to paint on this Moria Goblin now is the eyes. So first of all I come in with some Abaddon Black and sink this into the recess, being nice and neat, making sure it only goes into the eye socket. So take your time, you don't want to get this over his nicely painted face. And then I'm coming in with Wild Rider Red, and I'm putting a thin line of that within that line I just did of black. So you'll be able to see a bit of the black poking out on either side. and the Wild Rider red as a line in the middle of it. So you can see what that looks like. And now I just come back in with some Abaddon black and I put a vertical line in the middle of those lines of red I just applied. So this will look like a pupil, and it's a nice quick easy way of giving a red evil eye look. And that's it. That's how to quickly paint a Moria Goblin. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and have fun painting.